Patsy Ann. A long time ago in Alaska, a dog named Patsy Ann watched the horizon. Every day, she waited by the bay for ships returning from an expedition. Patsy Ann was a brilliant dog, and she was very unique. She was deaf. She couldn't bark either. But she used all of her other senses to know when a ship was near. Patsy Ann lived on the streets. Her owners did not want her because she could not hear. So, they abandoned her. She found refuge in a fancy hotel. Guests rubbed her back and scratched her chin. Many people gave her food. She became quite overweight. She became very famous. Visitors to Alaska were enthusiastic about meeting her. They brought presents for her. They liked seeing her, and the feeling was mutual. The mayor said Patsy Ann should be called the town's greeter. The people in town loved Patsy Ann, too, even though she lived on the streets. They were willing to fight to keep her. A new law made all dogs wear a collar and get shots. The mayor received many complaints. People wanted Patsy Ann to be able to stay. One ambitious sailor got people to help. Together, they paid for Patsy Ann to go to the veterinarian. She got her shots and collar. She could stay. When Patsy Ann died, everyone missed the town's loyal greeter. So, the mayor hired someone to make a statue of Patsy Ann. He restored the town's greeter. Now, she sits at the dock forever, waiting for ships to come home. Shipwrecked. Simon Yates was a lawyer. He helped many people. However, he was not a nice man. His policy was to help only rich people. He didn't bother about social injustice. He made a lot of money, but many people didn't like him. Even people on his staff didn't like him. They wanted bad things to happen to him. In fact, they were glad when he got into trouble. Simon had a very bad day. He did many things wrong and lost his job. Soon, he didn't have any money. His wife, Mrs. Yates, began to have doubts about him. Simon wanted to start a new life. He planned to leave the country. He mentioned his plan to the captain of a ship. The captain was exploring the world. The captain felt bad for Simon and said, "I will take you to foreign countries." They left the next day. Near the conclusion of their international trip, the weather turned bad. A wave pushed Simon off the boat. But he was alive. He swam toward an island. After a long time, he got there. At first he was upset. He was lost and alone. "I'll never go home again," he thought. He had a lot of problems, but he survived. He built a house in a tree. He lived on a diet of fish. He made tools from wood and bones. He made a cup to drink rainwater. Slowly he learned to be happy on the island. He swam every day. He had trouble sometimes, but he always found a way to fix the problem. Life was simple. He liked it. Finally, people on a ship saw Simon on the island. They wanted to take him home. But Simon was happy. He gave them a long speech about life. He said he wanted to stay. He liked his new, simple life more than his old life. Anton's great discovery. Anton van Leeuwenhoek was a Dutch cloth merchant. His life began to change after he got his first microscope in 1653. It was a very simple microscope. It had a lens and an upright stand. It could make small things look large. It was handy for looking closely at cloth. Soon, Anton felt a longing to build a more powerful microscope. He dreamed of using it to make an important scientific discovery. He wanted to become famous. 3 decades later, he did. For many years, Anton experimented with microscopes and lenses. Eventually, he constructed a very powerful microscope. If he had sold the concept to others, it would have made him very rich. However, Anton refrained from surrendering his secret to anyone. Instead, he wanted to use it to become famous. So he used his secret microscope to study the natural world. One day, he was looking at saliva from his mouth with the microscope. In the saliva, he saw numerous tiny particles. Some of them were moving. He thought that the particles were tiny organisms. So he isolated them from each other and studied each one carefully. Then he classified them into different categories. Some were round. Others were long and had tails. All were alive. Anton was so excited. He knew he could become famous now. He was the first person to see these tiny organisms. So he drew diagrams of the organisms and sent them to a group of scientists in London. The scientists were sophisticated men who did not believe tiny, animate organisms could live in our mouths. Anton made a plea for them to come to Holland to see the organisms with their own eyes. The men took a ferry to Holland and met Anton. They performed a careful review of his work, and they conceded that he had made a worthwhile discovery. Anton van Leeuwenhoek had discovered bacteria. After decades of hard work, he had become famous.